A Moment of War is a 1991 memoir by the British author Laurie Lee. It's the first part of an autobiographical trilogy written over a period of more than 30 years, dealing with the author's childhood and early adulthood. The first part, Cider with Rosie, appeared in 1959. I've talked about it in a separate video, so I won't cover it again here. Part 2 was I Walked Out One Midsummer Morning. The title is based on a Gloucestershire folk song. Begins with an account of the author leaving home in 1934 when he's 19. What's remarkable about it from today's perspective is the restraint. His mother cooks him a heavy breakfast, then watches him wordlessly as he eats it. For all anyone, including the reader, knows, they might never see each other again. As he leaves, she silently raises her hand in farewell and blessing. It's strangely moving. Incredibly, Lee has no plan. He earns a living for a while busking with his violin. Then he meets a half-American woman whose father, an anarchist, helps get him a job on a building site pushing wheelbarrows. When the contract's over, he decides, on the crazy grounds that he knows a single sentence of Spanish, that he's going to Spain. Presumably, he's got a bit saved up, so he hops on a boat and arrives in Vigo, in the northwest of the country. The rest of Midsummer describes his impressions of Spain, but also the internal tensions between left and right. When civil war breaks out in 1936, a British battleship comes to evacuate any of its citizens stranded in the country, and Lee accepts the offer. Hostilities commence just after the left-wing Republicans won a majority in the country's general election. Nationalist forces unleashed a violent and bloody attempt to unseat them. The whole thing turned into a proxy war with Stalin on one side and Hitler and Mussolini on the other. Many otherwise unconnected people in Europe and America interpreted the conflict as a fight to the death between socialism, however interpreted, and fascism. Those of a liberal persuasion flocked to join what were called the International Brigades so they could fight the nationalists on the ground. Lee quickly regretted his decision to leave Spain, and he returned by crossing the Pyrenees under the guidance of a friendly Frenchman, which is roughly where Midsummer ends and A Moment of War begins. Unfortunately, his spontaneity didn't serve him well on this occasion, as George Orwell learned when he tried to enlist at around the same time in Barcelona. The Republicans were understandably worried about spies. To join the International Brigades, you had to have the backing of a respected left-wing organisation in your own country, which of course Lee didn't have. So when he arrived in Spain, he was arrested and imprisoned. He thought he was about to be executed, but after some time, he was actually taken to join one of the International Brigades. I heard later that my progress had not gone unnoticed, he tells the reader by way of explanation. I must have been watched from France all the way through Perpignan. Nevertheless, it's not exactly the deliverance he's been seeking. Eventually, he decides there isn't that much difference between the two sides. He participates in the fighting for Teruel, but he learns that the Spanish don't particularly like the foreigners supposedly fighting on their behalves, and of course they're all seriously under-equipped. We had yet to learn that sheer idealism never stopped a tank, he says at one point. I won't give the ending away, except to say that in some ways Lee's contribution to the Republican cause was underwhelming, beside which there have always been doubts about its accuracy. A Moment of War was written over half a century after the events it describes, when Lee was 77. Having said that, the Spanish Civil War was one of the major European conflicts of the first half of the 20th century. Anything that reflects on it, and beyond that on war generally, is worth reading. And like all of Lee's work, this is very well written.